With Lucy Letby, the inquiry is to be made statutory after calls from bereaved families, which I thought, why do the bereaved families have to be the ones pushing for this? This is Health Secretary Steve Barclay saying it was the family's clear preference, as if it was just like a flimsy choice, that the inquiry be made statutory so that the judges could compel witnesses. What do they mean, a clear preference? I mean, wouldn't you have thought right at the beginning this would have been made statutory, and it shouldn't be up to people mourning their babies killed by a prolific child murderer? I mean,
first of all, what's statutory and what's non-statutory? Non-statutory is a talking shop where they try and gather information and provide a report against it. About it after.
No one has to give their names in that cause. No one.
No. And nobody's compelled. So I mean, nobody's forced to give evidence. There are limited powers to get evidence, and it's not led by a judge. This was always something that should have been dealt with by a statutory inquiry straight away. Senior lawyers, myself, have been saying this since it was announced that there should be a full judge-led inquiry. And funnily enough, it was Steve Barclay himself 10 days ago telling us all, well, we really want to get to the bottom of this, so we're going to do a speedy, as quickly as possible, so we'll do a speedy non-statutory inquiry so that people get the answers they want. Trying to oversell it to us as if we're that stupid. Families want and deserve answers, not just because of the grief and about the murders themselves, but how it was that this was allowed to happen. How were 7 consultants overruled by hospital management? And why is it that wouldn't be preferable, you know, those types of answers and that wide scope, looking at the governance issues that might also, and many consultants in other and retired consultants elsewhere, and even an expert witness in the Letby case, has said this is a wider issue about senior doctors being ignored by hospital managers who act more like businessmen and businesswomen who are more concerned about PR. Now,
all right, so let me ask you the question that you've asked rhetorically. Why would the government not, right from the word go, have talked about a statutory inquiry? Why have they seemingly left it until they've been pressured to do this? What might they be afraid of, Joseph?
Well, if it's a judge-led inquiry that's statutory, they can't control the scope. And that means that they won't be able to localise it in the same way. An independent judge who'd be a high court judge, serious, 50 years of legal experience typically these people have, and you end up with a situation where it's not just a risk that this hospital, Countess of Chester, and its management rightly get put through the ringer to get to the truth, but the systemic problems that are actually ones that are under the oversight or under the control of they're a government problem, not just a clinical problem over that period, and a government responsibility.
And there you might have it.
The fear of political blowback was palpable from the outset. So you get Steve Barclay soft soaping us at the beginning from the outset, saying we're going to do everything we can, we're going to do, and then he provides an option which is a talking shop. It was transparent, and the fact that he thought that he could get away with it, I have to say, I was saying immediately, in 3 or 4 days' time, this will be a statutory inquiry. I said it on this channel, on somebody else's show, and surprise, surprise.
Here we go. Clearly it's something that's, again, talked about during the summer holidays when a lot of people have only got one eye open because they're out basking in the sun. Let's stay on this whole, the whole thing around Lucy Letby. The other part of it was that she wasn't there or refused to be there for sentencing. Again, they've been talking about, this government's been talking about making it mandatory that somebody's dragged into court. If necessary, I'm guessing they would need to be shackled, but then you've got to get them out of the prison, haven't you? Then you've got, I mean, if you know you're going to be locked up and the key thrown away, then I'm just trying to think how that would work.
It's really challenging, this, because first of all, victim-led approach to sentencing hearings is the one part of the justice process in terms of court that should be sacrosanct in these types of cases.
Yes.
I'm a defence lawyer, but the idea that families have closure after a judgment is made, and part of that is the sentencing hearing. I think it's actually it's a welcome move. I don't agree with everything about trying to make it easier to convict people and all that against the evidence that some people seem to be thinking is a good idea, especially in emotive cases. But I think on sentence, I think the dignity for families, for victims, is sacrosanct. However, the practicalities, and we're all repulsed, aren't we, when somebody decides not to attend, but forcing them to attend, as the government has now said they're going to try to do physically. And the powers existed, but too many links in the chain were afraid. And this government legislation, when it comes, will make it easier in that regard. But it's one thing to compel attendance. It's another and much more difficult nut to crack to compel compliance. Getting somebody to come to court who doesn't want to come to court and then be silent and then engage with their own sentencing hearing when they're getting a 40, 50-year sentence, whole life term. It's actually, practically speaking, if the aim is dignity and closure, then that will be disrupted. Having said that, I think probably in most cases you won't get the Cashman types who come in and are willing to rant and rave and all of that and demean and degrade the whole experience for all the other court users and the victims' families. I think in most cases, once people know that this old popular trick that was started probably by Dale Cregan, the police killer in 2013, has been used by other killers, especially since, not to attend once they realised that they wouldn't be produced by prison staff, etc. I think once it's clear that that's over, people will just trundle in and they'll be quiet and then they'll go out. But I think judges all have to be given some discretion here, and also families should prepare for themselves and also make their feelings known. If somebody's unwilling, there should be some stake, some ability to engage with that decision making about whether they really need to be brought in with the prosecution and families.
So, and Joseph, that you make a very good point there. When families are in court for something like, let's use the Lucy Letby case, is there someone with them who goes, who warns the families of what's coming up or what have you? Or do they just pitch up to court not knowing what's going to come?
In some cases, they're better than others. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the reality is that in the last 15 years, nothing in the justice system works like it should because there isn't the funding and there isn't the thought. The witness service do a great job. The police try their best, the CPS, and, they try and engage. And in the more serious cases, they do. But it's not unusual for cases, especially lower-level crimes, that still have a massive effect on people's lives. It's not unusual for somebody to not even know that the case hasn't even been in court because the police officer or the CPS haven't let them know that the person has been in court and has been sentenced or whatever's happened because we're talking about a justice system and a criminal justice system that's running on fumes. I see it all the time in terms of legal aid funding. We can't even afford to take on all the legal aid cases that we would like to. We essentially do them as charity on our doorstep wherever we can as part of our commitment to the community that we've been in for 40 years. But, it's the reality is that until people realise that justice is something worth paying for, the police, the prosecution, even legal aid, we're going to have these problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Joseph, thank you so much for giving us that roundup of what's happening in the courts this week, and I'm sure you'll be back next week with exactly the same. We'll be covering some of these points again, but there'll be lots of news stories as well. Joseph Monson there, our legal eagle and broadcaster.